Battle Through the Heavens, Chapter 232. Xiao meets the Ice Emperor once more. The green heat stings his lungs, anchoring a fractured spirit back to the cooling grit of the dunes. He shifts the crushing weight of the ruler, feeling the new pulse scrape against his veins with each heavy step. As sand yields to grass, he carries this strain into the light of civilization, a silent shadow moving under the eyes of strangers.
Occasional patches of green grass and leaves appeared, decorating the boundary between the desert and the continent. However, compared to the monotonous yellow sand of the desert, it was indeed much more pleasing to the eye. Because this place was approaching the edge of the desert, one could occasionally meet travelers coming and going, along with small mercenary squads returning from hunting magical beasts in the desert. At the junction of the desert and the continent, a figure dressed in black clothes walked neither fast nor slow. Behind him, a black heavy ruler as long as a person's height formed a strange combination, attracting many surprised looks from passers-by. However, the youth in black clothes seemed not to notice the surprised looks around him. His steps still slowly moved on the solid road. However, if one were careful, they could discover that the youth walked in a straight line, as if conducting a precise measurement. The distance between each step was almost equal. The blazing sun hung high in the sky, unable to make the youth shed a single drop of sweat. His relaxed appearance was like he was taking a walk, not at all rushed, as if he were enjoying the scenery.
The youth continued his journey leisurely like that for nearly a whole day. When the blazing sun slowly descended toward the desert horizon, he finally slowed his steps and looked up at the huge city appearing at the end of his vision. A faint look of joy appeared on his delicate face. He stretched lazily, the sound of his joints popping clearly. He laughed softly, his hands slipping into his robes, and said happily,
Mo City finally arrived. Teacher, are we really going to help that guy refine a medicinal pill?
Standing on a sand dune, Xiao looked at the people coming and going at the city gate, frowned slightly, and spoke in a low voice. That guy in his mouth was naturally the hermit he had accidentally met in Mo City before, who once stood among the top 10 experts of the Jiama Empire, the Ice Emperor, Haibo Dong.
Ha! So what? Since it is like this, just give that Du Huang a favor along the way. Furthermore, don't you want to obtain that ancient map fragment? Although you have obtained a type of heavenly flame today, after the flame mantra level up, it will become even more difficult. Moreover, the purifying lotus demon flame is a very good thing. If you can obtain it in this entire Dochi continent, I'm afraid there aren't many people who could easily look down on you.
However, he is still not a peaceful person after all.
Xiao said, relaxing his body.
What can he do if he's not peaceful? Even if he recovers his strength, he is just a Do Hong. What can he do to us?
Yao Lao laughed indifferently.
However, one cannot fail to be on guard. We are not soft persimmons. For safety, we must still arrange some protection. As I said before, when refining the pill, he must provide the ingredients. If he doesn't have evil intentions and follows the agreement, fine. If he has some scheme, we naturally won't show mercy.
Hearing this, Xiao grinned and nodded slightly, saying softly,
That's fine. Let's do as teacher says. If I can give a Do Huang expert a favor, it's actually quite good, especially 2 months from now when I go to the Yunlan sect. Although I'm not worried about the duel with Nilan Yanran. I'm just afraid that after winning, those old fellows of the Yunlan sect might become angry from shame and want to attack me. This Ice Emperor would also be a good bodyguard.
Alchemists are best at building networks. Didn't you see this time during the fight for the Heavenly Flame? With Pilking Jiuyi's strength, it was basically impossible to charge so deep into the desert. However, that guy still managed to find such a large group of experts to help, and in the end, he even made the Snake People race descend into chaos.
Yao Lao said with a smile.
Yes!
Xiao nodded and smiled, lightly patting the heavy Xuan ruler behind his back, then walked slowly toward the huge city located on the edge of the desert. Successfully entering the city, Xiao stood on the street looking around. Following the route in his memory, he walked toward the end of the street. A long while later, he stopped at an old-style map shop at the end of the street. Perhaps because it was dark, the main door of the shop was currently slightly closed. A faint lamplight from inside spilled out, shining on Xiao. Standing at the shop, Xiao looked at the slightly closed door. His heart couldn't help but waver. He didn't expect that when he caused trouble before, he would run into a hermit who was a Dou Huang expert. This kind of result was indeed somewhat unexpected. Glancing at the sparse flow of people at the intersection, Xiao then quietly pushed open the main door, slipped inside, and quickly closed the door. Inside the shop, a piece of moonlight stone emitted a faint glow, gentle and not dazzling, illuminating the interior. The layout was still the same as before. The things that were damaged during the previous fight had been perfectly repaired. At the end of the counter, the old man still had his head lowered, carefully carving a map. Because he was too focused, he didn't sense that Xiao had quietly entered. Inside the shop, there were 4 people trying to buy maps, 3 males and 1 female. The clothes on their bodies were all luxurious. Behind the 4 people, several strong men stood respectfully. When Xiao entered, they also turned their heads to look, but seeing Xiao travel-worn appearance, they turned their heads back, reluctantly looking at the maps in front of them. When the 4 of them turned their heads, Xiao also looked at their faces. The 3 men had decent appearances, but their eyes contained arrogance. On the other hand, the female wore a tight red long dress. Her appearance was quite beautiful, and her figure in the red dress also looked curvaceous and interesting. The 3 men occasionally glanced at the female's alluring back, their eyes filled with admiration and desire. However, within that admiration, there also seemed to be a sense of weariness. Xiao didn't pay attention to the strange gestures of this group. His eyes swept over the old man. He slowly walked to the counter, casually picked up a map, and waved it lazily. Hearing the sound coming from the map, the old man's pen, which was moving as smoothly as flying clouds and flowing water, stopped slightly. However, just like the previous meeting, he still didn't raise his hand, only saying indifferently,
I'm sorry. The shop is closed today. If you want to buy a map, please come back tomorrow.
Hearing the old man still being as cold as before, Xiao couldn't help but shake his head. This old fellow. Just as Xiao was about to speak, 2 fierce-looking strong men suddenly blocked his path. Their hands tightly gripped the weapons at their waists, their faces full of hostility as they stared fixedly at him.
Huh?
This sudden scene made Xiao dazed. He hadn't said anything. Could he have offended someone? He immediately shook his head in confusion, looking at the woman in the red dress. Her status in Mog City seemed not to be low.
When Grandmaster Bing is creating a map, he does not wish to be disturbed. Therefore, please leave.
The woman said with a smiling face, walking over slowly and speaking indifferently. Although the female's voice was gentle and pleasant, her words contained a sense of overbearing arrogance.
Do these people also know his true identity?
Seeing the woman being so considerate toward Hai Bodong, Xiao was momentarily stunned, muttering in his heart with surprise. Compared to Xiao finding it strange, the woman in front of him felt even more annoyed in her heart. Her father always said that the old man in this map shop was a very powerful expert. Therefore, he had ordered his precious daughter to come here and inquire after the old man, whenever she was free, to take the best care of him for their own benefit. However, the old man didn't seem to appreciate her care at all. Every time she came, he had a cold face, which was truly hard for this high-spirited woman to accept. Although she was still treated coldly, this woman believed her father implicitly. Furthermore, one time she had sensed the terrifying aura the old man had unintentionally released. Under that aura, she unexpectedly found that she could only tremble. Therefore, for a long time now, although the old man's attitude was cold, she still treated him extremely respectfully, acting subservient and smart, making her friends find it hard to believe. Was this really the arrogant demoness who once turned Mo City upside down? Today, she was still like before, coming to the shop to help the old man with work. Of course, the old man's attitude toward her was still as cold as before. Except for the times he looked outside, he ignored them, focusing all his mind on the maps. The red-dressed woman had an arrogant personality. Being treated like this naturally filled her heart with resentment. However, she couldn't release this resentment on the old man. At this moment, Xiaoyan's intrusion just happened to become a place for her to vent her anger. Ignoring the woman's arrogant scolding, Xiaoyan glanced at her casually. He carelessly stuffed the map in his hand back into the counter, tilted his body, and quickly slipped past the protection of the two strong men.
Seeing Xiaoyan not listening to her, and instead pushing his luck by getting closer, the woman's willow-like eyebrows rose. A flash of dangerous light crossed her pupils, and her snow-white chin tilted up slightly. Immediately, several strong men around, faces full of hostility, swarmed around to surround Xiaoyan. The woman in the red dress crossed her arms in front of her chest, her eyes watching Xiaoyan with sarcasm. Naturally, while she was preparing to hear Xiaoyan's plea for mercy, he performed an action that left her jaw dropping. She saw Xiaoyan tear a stack of maps with one hand, then fiercely walk toward the old man whom the woman held in high regard. While walking, he muttered, "I guess this guy is some kind of cramp."
Old geezer, acting cold to me. Do you still want to refine that pill or not?